Hello, it's Lexi, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the two UDL Influenced Reflections that stood out to me from this school year. The first reflection that stood out to me was the one I created on Adobe Spark, and the next reflection that stood out to me is the one I created on S'more. Let's go ahead and jump into what each one is and why I think they're important and stand out to me. The first reflection I chose to talk about was my Adobe Spark video reflection because it talks all about UDL. I thought it was important to highlight UDL because it is something that we learned, discussed, and used a lot throughout this semester. So let's get into it. As I talk about in my reflection video, Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is a framework that provides guidelines for designing instruction and learning environments that are accessible and effective for all learners, regardless of their abilities, learning preferences, or backgrounds. Watch this little clip from my video. I would like to bring this in as it really introduces what the UDL guidelines and method is, which is a really big teaching method and pedagogy that is going to affect my future teaching and my students' future learning. So let's get into that. UDL is going to be super impactful in my future teaching and my students' learning. I am going to continue as the video plays in the background. As the rest of my reflection talks about, providing multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement allows us to create a learning environment that is inclusive for all students. As I touch on at the end of my reflection video, the key to all of this is planning. It is super important to take the time to plan curriculum that is student-centered, student-focused, inclusive, flexible, relevant, engaging, and most of all, removes barriers to learning. My video will be linked, but we're going to go ahead and get into my S'more now. The second reflection that I chose to highlight is my S'more reflection that focuses on the MECA framework. I chose to highlight this reflection because the MECA framework is something that we learned, discussed, and also applied in class. The MECA framework was huge when I was planning my lesson. I found myself going back to the framework and looking at it for ideas and even to make sure that I was on the right track. So the MECA framework really played a big role in my success this semester. So let's go ahead and get into my S'more. My S'more highlights the 6 different parts of MECA, the parts being methods, materials, environment, content, collaboration, and assessment. I then delve into them deeper one by one. I start off with methods. Methods is referring to the different instructional approaches and methods that we use in our classroom. As you can see in this chart that I included here, there are a few different ones and they could even be layered with each other to accomplish the same things. I would recommend looking at this chart in more detail on my S'more. The next section that my S'more covers is the materials section. This section talks about the multiple means of representation that we can be using to ensure that we are reaching all different types of learners. As you can see in this chart that I have down here, it tells the different learners that we have, and it also gives some things that we could be doing to reach all learners, but they are doing the same thing. For example, an auditory learner would be listening to a text out loud, while a visual learner would be using a dictionary. They're accomplishing the same goal, but they are doing it in the style that fits best for them. So materials, we should always be taking into consideration the things and resources that we have and how we could best help our students. The next part of the MECA framework is E for environment, and it talks a lot about how the environment is controlled by the teacher, and we should be using a lot of proactive strategies to strive for positivity and inclusivity in our classroom. The next part is content. The content refers to what we are teaching. We should be looking at our learning barriers that our students could run into, and we should be planning for those and ensuring that all of our students have access to the content. Our next part of the MECA framework talks about the collaboration. This part is really important as it focuses on students and how it should be very much student-centered, and how teachers should be like a tour guide for students as they are on their journey. Then this next part of my s'more talks about how we could use some of the MECA framework in our classroom. I talk about how we could apply it in our class discussions, online resources, and texts, which are all very important parts in our classroom. At the end of my s'more, I added some considerations that teachers should be taking into thought before teaching their lesson. In short, it is very important to be thinking about the students. We should be thinking about the barriers that they're going to run into and pretty much how this lesson is going to play out. This s'more was super important to me throughout the semester, as I was able to come back to it as I was creating my lesson, make sure I was on track, and even grab some ideas. Thanks for watching.